Hi there, I'm Adele, and this Christmas, my parents told me something no child ever wants to hear. They said, "We love your friend's sister's kid more than yours." It wasn't just words, it was years of secrets, favoritism, betrayal. They cut my kids out of Christmas, spread lies about me to our entire family, even tried to take me to court to force their way back into our lives. How did it get this far? How did the people who raised me become the ones who broke me? If someone had asked me a year ago what the holidays meant to me, I would have said family, warmth, tradition. That's what I believed, until last fall, when my parents finally showed me where I really stood. It was a chilly Saturday afternoon in late October. Grant was helping Finn button up his little coat, while Maisie spun around the living room in her new dress. I watched them from the kitchen, sipping coffee, trying to shake off the heaviness in my chest. We were heading to my niece Leona's 8th birthday party at my parents' house. I told myself, like I always did, that maybe this year things would be different. That maybe they wouldn't make it so obvious who their favorite was. The party looked the same as every year. My mother's spotless living room, pumpkin-scented candles burning, and Martha and Gerald, my parents, floating around like royalty. Sabrina and Victor, my sister and brother-in-law, greeted us like nothing had ever happened. Like the years of subtle slights didn't exist. But it all unraveled when the gift opening started. My mother clapped her hands dramatically as Leona tore into the shiny wrapping paper. "Oh, look at that, an iPad, because she's such a good girl, so well-behaved and mature." Gerald chuckled, adding loudly enough for the whole room. "Not every kid knows how to act like Leona." I felt Maisie shrink beside me, her little fingers tightening around mine. Finn's smile faded as he stared at the stack of presents that would never belong to him. My parents' smiles never once turned our way. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was too sensitive. Then, 3 days later, while I was prepping lesson plans at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "We're keeping Christmas small this year. Just adults. And Leona." I reread it twice, thinking I misunderstood. But there it was, clear as day. My kids weren't welcome. I sat there, phone trembling in my hand, my heart breaking for Maisie and Finn. They finally said it out loud. I stared at that text message, my heart breaking for my kids. For days, the words echoed in my mind like a cold wind slamming against a locked door. Thanksgiving was coming, and I tried to focus on planning dinner. I chopped onions, measured flour, marinated the turkey, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that message. While prepping pie crust, I couldn't help but remember another Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. We had all gathered at my parents' house, as usual. That year, I had convinced myself to brush off the small comments, the subtle digs, but it had hit harder than I expected. Leona had walked in carrying a brand new iPad, a bow still taped to the box. Everyone had clapped and cheered like she'd won a Nobel Prize. My mom had said, loud enough for the whole room, "Well, she's responsible enough for something like this. That's why we wanted to give her something special." Maisie had sat quietly next to me, holding a small plastic jewelry set my parents had handed her earlier, like an afterthought. Finn had tugged at my sleeve, asking why Leona got the cool toy and not him. I'd smiled and said, "Maybe next year, buddy." But inside I felt something fracture. This year I wanted to protect them from that kind of hurt, but I couldn't stop it. The night before Thanksgiving, as I laid out plates and folded napkins, Maisie came into the kitchen holding a paper from school. "Mom, the holiday recital is tomorrow. Can Grandma and Grandpa come?" I swallowed hard and forced a smile. "We'll see." The next day, I scanned the auditorium during Maisie's performance. Every time she glanced into the crowd, I knew who she was looking for. After the show, while I helped her out of her costume, I checked my phone. A message from Sabrina blinked on the screen. "Leona won her school's award today. Mom and Dad went to watch. So proud." Maisie tugged at my arm. "Did Grandma and Grandpa see me sing?" I smiled tightly. "They couldn't make it, sweetie." That night, after tucking the kids in, I sat in the car outside my parents' house. I stared at their front porch, the lights glowing warm and inviting, like nothing was wrong. I gripped the steering wheel, my chest burning. I knew then something had to change. I knew then something had to change. But knowing didn't make it easier. A few days after Maisie's recital, I found myself unable to sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring at the dark window, wondering how long I'd been pretending not to see the truth. My parents had always favored Sabrina's family, but lately, it felt like more than favoritism. It felt calculated. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something bigger beneath their smiles. That night, on impulse, I dug out an old folder from the cabinet, a folder I hadn't touched in years, filled with bank statements and email printouts. Back when Dad had heart surgery, I used to send money every month to help them out. I'd forgotten how much I'd given. I flipped through the pages until one envelope caught my eye. It wasn't something I remembered receiving. A letter from a bank I didn't even use. My name printed on the front. I opened it, curiosity turning to confusion. It was an account summary listing me as the authorized custodian of a college fund. For Leona. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding. It wasn't just that my name was there. It was the dates. The initial deposit lined up with the year I started sending money to help them. I picked up the phone and called the bank's number. My voice shook as I verified my identity, asked for details. The woman on the other end confirmed it. Yes, the fund was for Leona. Yes, the initial money had come from an account matching my old transfers. I hung up, my hands numb. They hadn't just favored Sabrina's child. They had used me to do it, without ever telling me. The next morning, I sat across from Grant at breakfast, barely touching my coffee. They used my money, I said quietly, to build a future for Leona, and they put it in my name so it wouldn't look suspicious. Grant frowned. You're sure? I slid the letter across the table. Positive. He shook his head, the same disbelief I felt written across his face. That's not family, Adele. That's manipulation. Later that evening, after the kids were asleep, I grabbed my keys and drove. I didn't tell Grant where I was going. When I pulled up outside my parents' house, I sat there for a moment, staring at the glow from the porch light, my heart thudding against my ribs. I wasn't going to let them keep hurting my family. I wasn't going to let them keep hurting my family. But cutting them off, walking away from my own parents, wasn't something I could do overnight. In the weeks that followed, I avoided their calls. When their names popped up on my phone, I silenced it without hesitation. Grant noticed the distance I'd created, but he didn't push. He knew better than anyone how much this was eating at me. December crept in, cold and unforgiving. The nights grew longer, the days shorter. I threw myself into work, holiday crafts with my students, baking cookies with Maisie and Finn, wrapping gifts under the soft glow of our own Christmas tree. I told myself this was enough, that we were enough. One night, after tucking the kids into bed, I curled up on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. My thumb froze when I saw it. A post from my mother. A picture of her living room, decked out in lights and garlands, Leona smiling wide in the center, Sabrina and Victor flanking her. My parents stood behind them, arms draped around Sabrina's shoulders. The caption read, "So blessed to celebrate Christmas early with our beautiful family. Grateful beyond words for our precious Leona." I reread it twice. No mention of me, no mention of Maisie or Finn, no sign we had ever existed. Scrolling through, the comments felt like pressing on a bruise. "Beautiful family," one aunt wrote. "Leona is growing up so well. You're so lucky," said another. I sat there, staring at the screen, my chest tightening like a vice. It wasn't just the post. It was the message behind it. My parents weren't hiding it anymore. They were rewriting the narrative, making it clear who counted in their version of family. I closed the app and set the phone down, my hands trembling. The next morning, I didn't mention the post to Grant. Instead, I made breakfast, packed the kids' lunches, and went about my day like nothing had shifted, like the ground hadn't cracked beneath me. But that night, as the kids colored by the fireplace and Grant read over work emails, I sat quietly beneath the twinkling lights of our tree, staring at the ornaments Maisie and Finn had made. I realized then that I'd spent years trying to earn a place at a table that was never meant for me, and I was done. The next call I got wasn't from my parents. It was from Grant. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the kids were sprawled on the living room rug, coloring Christmas cards for their teachers. I was in the kitchen, sifting flour for another batch of cookies, trying to cling to the quiet happiness inside these four walls. Grant walked in, phone still in his hand. His face told me everything before he even spoke. "Your parents called me," he said flatly. I stopped stirring. "What?" He slid his phone onto the counter and crossed his arms. "They didn't call you. They called me." The silence between us stretched until he finally added, "They asked if I'd bring Maisie and Finn to Christmas dinner, without you." The bowl in my hands nearly slipped. "They told me," Grant continued, voice tight, "that you're being dramatic, that the kids shouldn't have to miss out just because you're upset." I felt the familiar knot twist in my stomach, a mix of rage, disbelief, and something colder. I set the bowl down gently, afraid of what I might do if I didn't. "So now I'm the problem," I muttered. Grant shook his head. "They said they didn't want to punish the children for your choices, as if you're the villain in this." I looked past him, at Maisie and Finn giggling over glitter pens, completely unaware they were being used as pawns. I took a breath, grounding myself. "This isn't about the kids," I said quietly. "It's about control. They want to decide who's worthy of being family." Grant nodded. "What do you want me to do?" I didn't hesitate. "Nothing. I'll handle it." That night, after the kids had gone to bed and the house had settled into its usual quiet, I sat on the edge of our bed, phone in hand. I typed out the message slowly, carefully. "If you ever go behind my back again, there won't be a next time. You've crossed the line." I stared at the words before hitting send. Afterward, I sat by the window, watching the snowfall, the world outside soft and still. I knew this wasn't over. I knew they'd never stop, not until I stopped them. But I had no idea how far they were willing to go. For a brief moment, after I'd sent that message, I believed maybe they'd finally heard me. The house was calm, quiet. Christmas was only days away, and I poured myself into the small, safe joys, baking sugar cookies with Maisie, helping Finn hang glittery stars on our tree. It almost felt like peace. Until the letter arrived. It was the afternoon of December 21st. I found the envelope in our mailbox, official looking, stiff. My name typed neatly on the front. I opened it at the kitchen counter, thinking it was another Christmas card. Instead, it was a formal letter from a law firm, a demand notice. My parents, Martha and Gerald, were requesting reimbursement for 38 years of financial support, housing, and caregiving services. They had calculated the cost of raising me, down to groceries, medical bills, and emotional labor. The sum at the bottom made me dizzy. $76,000. Grant walked in and found me staring at the letter. "What's that?" he asked, voice cautious. I handed it to him without a word. His jaw tightened as he read. "They're billing you for being their daughter?" I nodded, the weight of humiliation heavy in my chest. "Merry Christmas, right?" That night, as I tried to shake the sting of it, my phone rang. Aunt Claire's name flashed on the screen. I answered, already bracing myself. "Adele," she began sharply, "what on earth is going on? Your parents told the family you're cutting them off, suing them, trying to destroy them. I can't believe you treat your own mother and father like this." I gripped the phone tighter. "That's not what's happening, Aunt Claire." "Well, they say you've turned your back on family, that you're ungrateful after everything they've done." After I hung up, I checked social media. My parents' friends, distant cousins, all posting vague, passive-aggressive quotes about selfish children and family betrayal. The narrative had been rewritten again, and this time, I was the villain. I sat at the dining table that night, every message, every cruel comment weighing on me like stones. Then I opened my laptop. I gathered everything, every text, every email, the demand letter, screenshots of their social media posts. I created a file, and I drafted one final message. "If you keep attacking me, I will show everyone the truth. This is your last chance." My hands trembled as I hit send, but Christmas Eve would show me they had no intention of stopping. That evening, Our house glowed softly with the warmth of string lights and the smell of cinnamon cookies in the air. Maisie and Finn danced around the living room, their laughter blending with the faint sound of Christmas music playing in the background. Grant and I exchanged a quiet smile, both of us silently hoping maybe, just maybe, tonight would be ours, untouched by the chaos of the past weeks. We had just finished setting out the gifts under the tree when the knock came. It wasn't timid or hesitant, it was deliberate. Grant shot me a look, and my stomach dropped. I already knew. When I opened the door, there they were, Martha, Gerald, Sabrina, Victor, and Leona, all bundled in coats, faces plastered with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Martha held a tin of cookies like it was some kind of peace offering. "Sweetheart," she said, voice syrupy, "let's not ruin Christmas. We're family." Gerald chimed in behind her. "Enough of this nonsense. We forgive you." Forgive me. Those two words cracked something deep inside me. I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me so Maisie and Finn wouldn't hear. "You don't get to forgive me," I said quietly. "You don't get to rewrite the story. I've spent my entire life trying to be enough for you, and now you're standing here like you're the ones who've been wronged?" Sabrina crossed her arms. "Adele, this is childish. Can't we just move on?" I felt my jaw tighten. "You mean forget everything you've done? Pretend you didn't try to turn my own kids against me?" Martha's smile faded. "You're tearing this family apart." "No," I said, voice sharp. "You did that." Before they could answer, I turned and closed the door. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the kids had finally fallen asleep, I went to lock the front door, and that's when I saw it. An envelope tucked under the doormat. My name wasn't on it. Maisie's was. I picked it up, my stomach sinking, and unfolded the letter. It was from Martha, written in looping, careful handwriting. It painted me as the villain, the reason Maisie couldn't see her real family, accused me of keeping her away from people who loved her. I felt my throat tighten as I read the last line. "One day, you'll understand how unfair your mother has been." My hands shook as I walked to the fireplace and tossed the letter in. I watched it curl and blacken, reduced to ash. When I turned around, Grant was standing in the doorway, watching me. "They don't get to play the victim anymore," I said quietly. "Tomorrow it ends." I woke up on Christmas morning ready to fight. The house was quiet when I padded downstairs, the faint smell of coffee already filling the kitchen. I could hear the soft hum of the kids' excited voices upstairs as they got ready to open presents. For a moment, I let myself breathe. I wanted today to belong to them, to us. Then the doorbell rang. Grant glanced at me over his coffee, brows pinched. "Expecting anyone?" I shook my head and walked to the door, heart sinking. It wasn't a neighbor dropping off cookies. It wasn't a package. It was a process server. He handed me an envelope without meeting my eyes. "Merry Christmas," he muttered before walking away. Inside was a court summons. Martha and Gerald were suing me for visitation rights, grandparents' rights. They were trying to force legal access to my children. The paper trembled in my hands. Grant appeared behind me, reading over my shoulder. "They can't be serious." I couldn't speak. My throat tightened around the lump rising there. It wasn't enough for them to rewrite the family narrative. Now, they wanted the law on their side. The rest of Christmas passed in a blur. I smiled for the kids, watched them tear into their gifts, but I felt hollow inside, waiting for the next blow. The following days were spent in meetings with lawyers, phone calls, paperwork. Each conversation chipped away at me. "They don't have a real case," my lawyer said firmly, "but they'll drag you through it. They'll drain you emotionally, financially. That's the game." By January, the court date was set. Walking into that courtroom felt surreal. Martha sat at one table, dabbing her eyes dramatically. Gerald wore his usual stiff expression, like he'd been wronged. They played their part well, poor grandparents being denied their precious grandchildren. I sat tall, calm, and when it was my turn, I presented everything. Every text, every manipulation, every time they had belittled and excluded my children. I let the judge see the truth without emotion clouding my words. It didn't take long. The judge ruled in my favor. There was no valid reason to force contact, no precedent, no justification. Outside the courthouse, I faced them one last time. Martha's eyes were cold now, her mask slipping. "You'll regret this," she said. I shook my head. "No, I'm finally free." Then I turned away. But walking away didn't mean the scars disappeared. By February, the snow had started to melt in patches across Madison. The holiday lights were gone, and with them, the weight of the court battle seemed to lift, at least on the surface. The mornings were quieter now. No anxious glances at my phone, no tension humming beneath every conversation. I went back to packing lunches, checking homework, and standing in the school drop-off line like any other mother. But even as life settled, something inside me hadn't. Some mornings, I'd catch myself staring out the kitchen window, wondering how it had come to this. How two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally could choose to tear me down instead. I missed the idea of having parents. Not them. Their laughter laced with criticism, their smiles hiding sharp edges. But the fantasy of family. I grieved for something I never really had. One afternoon, as I graded papers at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in months. "I just want you to know. We see the truth now. They pushed too far." The words settled over me like a balm. Not everyone had turned away. Some people had seen through the stories, the performances, the lies. A few weeks later, at a family gathering I didn't attend, I heard from Aunt Claire that people had stopped inviting Martha and Gerald, that their circle had shrunk. "Your mom says you've poisoned everyone against her," Claire told me. But I hadn't said a word. They had done that all on their own. In the evenings when the kids had gone to bed, I'd sit by the fireplace with Grant. The quiet between us no longer heavy, but restful. Some nights the ache still surfaced, the longing for a mother's approval, a father's protection. The kind of love my children received without question. But I knew now, I couldn't change them. I couldn't heal their broken parts. All I could do was break the chain. On a cold Saturday morning in late February, I stood on the front porch, a mug of coffee warming my hands. Maisie and Finn laughed in the yard, bundled in coats and scarves, chasing each other across the patchy snow. Grant stepped outside, slipping an arm around my shoulders. "They're happy," he said softly. I nodded, watching our children's joy fill the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. "They're safe," I added. That was enough. There is no next chapter. This is where I finally chose peace. Before I close this story, I want to leave you with something. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who shows up, who loves without conditions, who protects your peace instead of destroying it. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love us the most are the very ones who hurt us the deepest. And when that happens, we're faced with an impossible choice. Do we keep shrinking ourselves to fit their idea of who we should be? Or do we stand up and break the cycle? I chose peace. I chose my children. I chose myself. And if you're watching this today, wondering whether you're wrong for setting boundaries, let me be clear. You are not. You deserve love that doesn't come with conditions. You deserve to be free from anyone who makes you feel small. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt like you had to fight for your worth in your own family? Or maybe you've had to walk away from someone you thought you couldn't live without. Tell me in the comments below. If this story touched you, drop it in the comments, or just let me know where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if you want to hear more true stories like this, that make you think, heal, and grow, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. If this video spoke to your heart, hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Because sometimes hearing someone else's story might just help you rewrite your own.